Welcome to this explainer. If you're tuning in right now, chances are you're a really hardworking student staring down the barrel of GCSEs, A-levels, IB, university finals, or some other massive high-stakes exam. Look, I see you and I completely acknowledge the sheer amount of effort you're putting in. You're probably spending countless hours at your desk just poring over textbooks and notes. But I've got to ask you a tough question right up front. Are you truly working smart or are you just working hard? Today, we're taking the absolute latest cognitive science research and transforming it into a highly practical roadmap. We want to make absolutely sure your effort actually translates into the grades you deserve.
So, are your study hours actually working? It is incredibly easy to confuse feeling exhausted with being productive. It takes a lot of honesty to admit this, and I really want to validate your stress right now, because exams are brutally tough. But the harsh reality, backed by educators and top performers alike, is that flawed study habits are the silent killers of your potential. You might be putting in 5 hours a day, but if you're using the wrong methods, well, you're essentially pouring water into a leaky bucket. Today, we're going to patch those leaks.
Here's exactly how we're going to fix this. We'll be looking at 1. The cramming trap, 2. The fluency illusion, 3. Facing your weaknesses, 4. Mastering exam technique, and 5. Planning and health essentials. Let's transition away from those common, comfortable mistakes and jump straight into the cognitive science.
Section 1. The cramming trap. Overloading the brain.
Okay, we all know that one student who boasts about pulling an all-nighter, right? The one surviving on a 2 a.m. energy drink crash just to cram an entire semester's worth of content into 12 hours. But here's the thing. Cramming massively overloads your brain's working memory. It's literally like trying to force a fire hose of information through a tiny garden hose. Sure, you might hold on to a few facts just long enough to walk into the exam hall, but it leads to shallow understanding and rapid forgetting. The science explains exactly why this happens. Back in the late 19th century, psychologist Hermann Ebbinghaus discovered what we now call the forgetting curve. Ebbinghaus found that without active review, we forget a massive portion of newly learned information within just a matter of days. Your brain is highly efficient. If it doesn't think you need the information, it just dumps it. A marathon study session simply cannot compete with this natural biological decay of memory.
To beat that biological decay, you need spaced repetition. Enter the 2-3-5-7 method. Instead of studying a topic for 5 hours the night before, try this. Study it, then review it on day 2, again on day 3, day 5, day 7, and then weekly. Every single time you review the material just as you're about to forget it, you interrupt that forgetting curve. You're signaling to your brain, hey, this information is actually vital. To make this work, you've got to treat early revision as an investment. You really need to start at least 3 to 4 weeks early for major exams. Consistent, structured review completely neutralizes the need to cram.
Moving on to Section 2. The fluency illusion. Passive versus active learning.
I can almost guarantee everyone watching this has fallen into this next trap. You sit down, open a textbook, grab a bright yellow highlighter, and just start painting the pages. It feels incredibly productive, doesn't it? You spend 2 hours doing this and think, wow, I've mastered this chapter. But this actually triggers the fluency illusion. That's the mistake of confusing the mere recognition of material with the actual ability to recall it under pressure. When you reread a page, your brain says, yes, I recognize this. But listen, recognition is not recall. Exams don't test if you recognize a fact when it's sitting right in front of you. They test your ability to pull that fact out of thin air. Studies, most notably those reviewed by cognitive psychologist John Dunlosky and his team, rate highlighting and rereading as astonishingly low-utility strategies. They just do not strengthen the neural pathways you need for problem-solving under time pressure. So we have to replace those passive techniques with active recall. Passive methods like rereading and highlighting, they're out. Active recall methods like brain dumps and Anki flashcards, they are in. A brain dump is beautifully simple. Just close your book, take a blank sheet of paper, and write down absolutely everything you can remember about a topic. Then open the book back up and see what you missed. It forces your brain to actually work. Similarly, using a spaced repetition system like Anki flashcards forces you to actively answer a question, and the software's algorithm mathematically schedules the hardest cards to appear more frequently. Now, I'll be honest, it feels much harder than highlighting, but that friction, that is the exact feeling of your brain actually learning. Another incredibly powerful active recall method is the protégé effect. This is the concept that you truly master something when you teach it to someone else. Try explaining a complex concept out loud, right now, as if you're teaching a friend, a younger sibling, or even just an imaginary student in your room. Doing this forces you to organize your thoughts logically.
And more importantly, the moment you stumble or can't explain the next step, you instantly expose a gap in your knowledge. You simply can't fake your way through teaching.
Section 3. Facing your weaknesses. Tackling the hard stuff.
Look, facing your weaknesses is a massive psychological hurdle. It gives you a great dopamine hit to fly through flashcards on a topic you already understand, right? But dodging the difficult subjects, like those math formulas that constantly confuse you or the history essays you absolutely dread, is a critical error. Exams are designed to test the full spectrum of the syllabus. If you skip your weak spots now, they are going to manifest as glaring grade-dropping holes on results day. To fix this, you need to use a technique called interleaving. Interleaving means mixing different topics in a single study session rather than blocking one subject for hours on end. So instead of doing 4 hours of just biology, you do 45 minutes of biology, then 45 minutes of chemistry, then 45 minutes of French. Why do we do this? Because it improves discrimination. It forces your brain to constantly adjust and figure out exactly which problem-solving strategy to apply. It literally turns your weaknesses into strengths because you're repeatedly encountering them in fresh contexts. It might feel a bit slower in the short term, but for long-term application, it is absolutely unmatched.
Section 4. Mastering exam technique. Executing under pressure.
Okay, so you have active recall down, and you know the content. Sadly, content knowledge alone just isn't enough if you misread a command word, like confusing analyze with describe, or if you completely miss the specific terminology the mark scheme is demanding. You must simulate the pressure and translate your knowledge into the exact format the examiner wants. First, remove distractions. Seriously, put the phone in another room. Second, use strict timing. If a past paper takes 2 hours, give yourself exactly 2 hours. Third, review every single mistake deeply. Don't just tally up your score. Figure out if your mistake was a content gap, a technique error, or just plain carelessness. And fourth, study the mark scheme like it's a sacred text. Notice the exact phrasing that earns top marks. Starting this timed practice early, ideally a month or more out, builds your speed, hones your accuracy, and drastically reduces test day anxiety.
Finally, Section 5. Planning and Health Essentials. The Foundations.
You can have all the active recall techniques in the world, but if your daily routine is chaotic, it's all going to fall apart. Jumping between subjects randomly or trying to multitask by watching a video, checking your phone notifications, and studying all at once, that violently fragments your attention. The human brain is simply not wired for true multitasking during deep, cognitively demanding work. Instead, use the 50-10 rule. This is a variation of the Pomodoro technique that requires 50 minutes of deep, uninterrupted, highly focused study, followed by a mandatory 10-minute break. And during that break, get away from your desk. Stretch, let your brain breathe. Working in these structured blocks prevents burnout and keeps your concentration razor sharp throughout the entire day. You also need a system that actually supports this level of focus. This means building a realistic timetable that covers all your subjects, prioritizing your weak areas. You absolutely must include buffer time too. Things will go wrong, a topic will take longer than expected, and you need a cushion so your whole schedule doesn't collapse. We already mentioned zero multitasking, which is huge. But remember, your brain is also an organ that needs fuel. Eat brain-friendly foods like proteins and nuts, stay hydrated, and incorporate movement into your day to keep the blood flowing. A solid plan replaces panic with steady, predictable progress.
And this brings us to a number that can literally make or break your grades: 7 to 8. That is the number of hours of sleep you need every single night. Let's completely break this toxic myth that sacrificing sleep shows dedication. It doesn't. It just impairs your memory consolidation, kills your focus, and ruins your mood. Sleep is the active period where your brain processes everything you learn that day and cements it into long-term memory. If you cut your sleep short, you are actively destroying the hard work you just put in at your desk.
Bringing it all together, consistency beats intensity. If you take away only one thing from this explainer, let it be this. Effective revision is not about clocking more chaotic, stressful hours. It's about using better methods. It's choosing active recall over passive rereading. It's prioritizing spaced repetition over last-minute cramming. A consistent 1 or 2 hours a day of highly effective, active studying will always, and I mean always, beat a frantic, panicked 12-hour cram session.
I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. Which mistake will you fix today? You don't have to overhaul your entire life overnight. Just audit your current habits. Are you a highlighter? Are you a crammer? Pick just one of the mistakes we discussed today and take one concrete step to fix it this week. Switch to brain dumps, or maybe just start going to bed an hour earlier.
Implement these changes, and you will absolutely see better retention, lower stress, and higher grades. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I'll see you in the next one. Now, go revise smarter.